All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's meeting for the Node API working group. Today, we'll be going over our normal agenda of going through the milestones and looking at issues and whatnot. But before we proceed with that, does anybody have any public announcements they would like to make? No? Okay, then let's get started. Let me share my screen. Share. All right, and then if anybody else joins in into the participants, just let me know, and then I'll be able to promote them to a panelist. All right. So first issue we have is stale issues. Let's see. We have this thread safe function should handle async errors. This was going to be fixed by this PR in core. And I believe Legendacast, you've been working on this one. Do you have any updates to discuss?
The last update is that we are waiting for Gabriel's last review. And I believe if there is no update, I will reach out to Michael and try to land the PR.
Right, because Gabe had a couple of comments here, and I guess you did some fix-ups of them. And Michael pinged him again. So it looks good to me. We'll just continue waiting for his review. Then we had this one here, but I think this one here was the proxy implementation that
I didn't do much progress there this week.
Okay, no worries. I was also thinking maybe instead of it being in core, maybe it would be better as a inside our example repo, which is Node examples. Yes, since it's not necessarily testing new features or anything, or it's like a new feature request. I was just thinking it might be better as putting it inside of the examples repo that we have, whenever you have time, of course.
Yeah, it actually sounds as a great idea. So I also assume that these examples not only C-based APIs, but also C++-based APIs, right?
Yes. The way that it's structured is we have the name of the example and then the various implementations, whether it's in the C++ Node add-on API or the underlying C-based Node API. Yes.
Okay.
And I guess we also have some NaN examples as well.
I actually really like it. So yeah, it's a great idea. Let me close this pull request, which I started in a core, and actually move it here. It will be much better.
Right. I kind of forget that we have this one, but it is a sort of the best place to put larger structures and larger examples. I did want to bring up with Michael, for some reason, the build and deploy website task is failing, but Michael's out this week, so I'll bring that up over the online communication, and then maybe he can take a look at it before next week's meeting. I'm not exactly sure where the website even goes. I guess maybe it's this. No, this is a explanation. So yeah, well, I'll just ping him about that and hopefully you can fix that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Then moving on, then I think this is the one that Nick actually has to close out. This was for the the fix in core, and we already discussed this last week. So we can go ahead and continue. All right, then that is it for stale issues. All right, then we can move on. I don't think there's been any additional comments on this. So we can go ahead and do what I normally do, and that is the npm Node.API. And just take a look at the weekly downloads. Everything looks good there. We did release the version 5 a couple weeks ago, and we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen, any issues regarding that. So everything's good here. Then moving on, drive towards full coverage. It looks like Jack is not on today, but let's take a look at issues. Pull requests. Let's see if there are any new ones added. We have, this one was added new for typed array stuff. All right, this one looks good to review. I don't think we necessarily need to go through this. Well, it's small enough. So let's see, typed array, element size, byte length, and byte offset. So let's take a look what they're doing here. So they created 3 additional methods that are probably being put in the exports. Yep. And then it is calling the element size, byte offset, and byte length. That looks good to me. So then let's look at we have this test data here. He added the byte size for each of the different classes according to this here with this size in bytes. Okay, that makes sense. And then there's this T. Okay, and I'm guessing that is some typed array. Okay, and all of that code was already there. So then he just checked for get typed array size of, okay, data, test data. Okay, let's just look a little more up. Okay, that's test data, and then we iterate through all of those. So then this data element, we expect the array, the typed, we expect this, the typed array that we create. We expect the size to equal this last element that he added. That makes sense. Get typed array byte offset to be 0. I guess it's 0 because we're not using any of the offsets inside the actual typed array. And then the byte length, multiplying the known size here by the length of the array, which we create as this is the length. So we expect the byte size to be that. Okay, that looks fine to me. Get typed array size of T. I'm wondering what this section is here. Aha, okay, so here is one when we actually use the offset. That makes sense. So then we can actually check the offset there. All right, because my original concern was that maybe it would always just return 0. But then since we actually have one that uses offset, okay, this one looks good to me. Okay, then callback info new target. Oh yes, this one was opened last week. I did not have a chance to look at that yet, but we can look at that offline because we have kind of already discussed that. So that is it. Then let's see. We can move on. Enable debug testing. I don't think Michael has added anything different to that. Let's just see. Yep, nothing new there. Then burn down list of issues raised. So we can go through any new issues or any new PRs. Does anyone have any that they would like to discuss first? Okay, I did start taking a look at your PRs here. This one looked good to me. I didn't really have any questions about this. So I guess I should make some comments. Were you able to do this experimental notice for the documentation?
Yeah, I'm in process of updating it. Also, changing again this kind of ref types. Like my iteration, what you see here, it's using like one of them called strong, another one called strong or weak, and I'm changing them right now to object and value, like ref type object and ref type value. So I think the idea would be one of them, like whatever we're using currently, is only for objects, and another one which like for any type of values.
Right. Okay.
So it's kind of, so I'm basically updating documentation right now and other stuff. So yeah, I thought like initially, yeah, I just need to rebase it and stuff, but looking effectively in this change after a few weeks and saying, oh, let me change names. And again, I'm not good with names, so think.
Yeah, that's always the tough part with development. One of the concerns that I would have with object is that you would still be able to do them with functions, right? Because I know what you mean by like object and value, maybe it's like primitive would be better or something versus, but I guess, you know what I'm saying? Because like you would be able to you can use this ref type strong or weak on thing, because you would rename this one to object, correct?
Yes.
Right, but you could use the strong or weak on functions as well. So it may be a little bit of a misnomer if you were to name it object. But I think we can sort of think about that a little offline, because like I said, the naming part is always the most tricky. But
Okay, let me start offline discussion, and because I need to better name. I don't like whatever I have right now, and it sounds like whatever I want to change to, it's also not good. So before we kind of merge this stuff, we really need to have good names.
Right. So I'll just add a comment to here and say that we discussed in this meeting that we're interested in changing the name, and we'll be taking suggestions if anyone has it. All right.
Okay, I'll add some variants on this kind of to this PR or as a response to this request, and we can kind of maybe brainstorm there.
Right. Okay. And then I also was trying to take a look at your finalizer one. But to be honest, I'm not very well versed in the in how all of the finalizers need to be called or need to work or whatnot. Like I was looking at this piece of code, right? And then I was like, I don't know why this section needs this finalizer context, but this other one doesn't. So I don't think I'm really that that strong in being able to make a good assessment on this PR. Legendicast, if you have any additional free time, it'd be great if you could take a look into this and see if there's anything that's needed.
Yeah, right. I'll try to do it.
Okay.
Next month, in next week.
Yeah. Is the PR ready for review? I'm seeing now that there are a couple of merge conflicts.
It's not ready, and also I have some new thoughts about certain aspects about API shape a little bit. So,
okay.
Let me rebase it because it was recently merged one of my change with remember with Sedeco calling conventions.
Right.
So technically all these existing PRs and somehow like needs to be rebased and changed, especially if they introduce new functions.
Okay.
Let me rebase it today with PR, and actually if you could have a look. So at this point, I still didn't write documentation for this code. So like still kind of in some sense like drafty state.
Okay, I see you have these couple of to-dos. Unit tests, did you have tests?
No, yeah.
No, okay, all right.
I kind of was curious first like about overall approach. But it sounds like overall approach okay-ish. So I probably will go ahead and add.
Right. And just to reiterate a little bit, the thought is that we'd be able to split the finalizers into those that need JavaScript context and ones that do not, right?
Technically, my understanding, like then we discussed a few weeks ago, we will effectively have this additional flag for finalizer and say if it needs to have access to JavaScript or not. And effectively default would be that we don't access JavaScript. So think about like you want to just simply wrap simple C++ object. Everything what you want to call in finalizer is just C++ destructor. So majority cases, people don't need to call JavaScript. Right? But people can specify non-default value, which say, I do need to run JavaScript. In this case, instead of running this finalizers as a kind of GC pass, we'll do it as we do today as part of set immediate.
Okay, so the existing current implementation of the finalizers do allow the developer to use a JavaScript context. And you are thinking of making the default, once we split it, you want to make the default not require the JavaScript context. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
At least what I believe it's what Gabriel said kind of a few weeks ago during our discussion.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can really pick the default because, you know, like the existing implementation, there is no choice. So once we do have a choice, we can pick the default, and then as long as it's documented, you know, then it should be fine.
Right.
Okay. Anything else to discuss on this one?
No.
All right,
And
then.
we definitely, before we merge with this one, I need to do it after Legend Cast submitted his PR we just mentioned before today.
Right. Okay.
Because it also affects how finalizers work. So technically, I need to kind of rebase it on top of the PR.
Okay. So you would say that this one is dependent upon Legendicast's PR.
Yes.
Okay. So we can
Because it affects effectively the same area, if you like.
all right. Let's then put a comment saying that we're waiting for this PR then a little bit. This one. Okay. Let's make sure. Yes, okay, that's the one. Okay. Yes, since since both PRs touch. All right, I'll put that. Anything else to discuss on this one?
Thank you.
All right, then I have I have a PR that I actually added on the node examples for async iterators. And this is because there was a comment or an issue for, can you make an example of async iterators on plain C? Oh, I'm just now seeing this. Because the example that I made was using Node add-on API, which obviously is the C++ wrapper, but I think it provides a good enough starting base for the poster. I've got two examples. One is kind of trivial. It is this async iterator one, and it's a C++ equivalent of something like this, where you have an iterator that's from and to, and then when you iterate over it, it has the async iterator function that has a next function, returns a promise that resolves after a set timeout. And then you can loop over it using something similar like what the poster was requesting. After I wrote, and I guess we can quickly look at the iterator here. I'll just throw this here and we can just take a look at it. After I wrote this one, I sort of figured that it may not be a worthwhile example because it's just really using, like set timeout and whatnot in order, and it's still sort of all using the node thread and whatnot. So after I made this one, I made this another async iterator that is backed by the thread safe functions, but it uses the same method of iteration that the other one uses. But this one is backed by a thread safe function in order to do that iteration. And it uses the mutex and conditional variables here. So basically what happens, you construct this iterator passing in the current and last for where you want to loop through. And when you call this iterator function, which is the async iterator, calls that iterator function here. It will does, some sanity checks, but then it creates your thread safe function here, and it creates the thread, and then it returns an iterator that has, or iteratable that has that next value, which is a function, and it uses that mutex to for locking and whatnot. And then it will set the deferred on this this instance, and then it notifies all of the watchers, and then it will return the promise for that deferred. And then here's the thread entry where it has the same, uses the condition variable to wait for the deferred to be set. Then it does its sort of calculations on the thread. So we do some simulate intensive work here, and then it makes a call to the thread safe function. And this data type is a, where do we say that in the private using, okay. The context of the type safe function, thread safe function is this example class itself, the data that we're passing. It's a unique pointer to the deferred, if it's done, and then the value. So then when we call the thread safe function in the thread, we move the deferred, and this is, let's go to that definition, which is this here. So we move that, and depending on if it's done or not, true or false, and if it's not done, we pass the value, otherwise we pass no value. And then inside the call.js, which is responsible for converting the native data to JavaScript data, we basically resolve rather that promise with the structure that iterables need, whether it's done or not, and then the value. So if you guys have an opportunity to look at that, that would be great. I noticed that I guess I couldn't add you as a reviewer. I guess it's because you're not part of the team, but I did put the non-team members in CC here. So if you guys can take a look, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll do.
Then that's all that I have. So let us then go to any, let's see if there are any new issues created. This one is not new, but I can't remember. Yes, this is what we discussed in the meeting using, so to refresh, they wanted to be able to have some way to easily use this buffer's value inside a standard type like array and vector. And then we had suggested using the buffer's data and length in the std vector constructor, or using span, or using array buffer new and giving it its own data and length. All right, and let's see what they said here. I'm able to fetch the data using data. However, when converting the fetch data back using new, I'm getting unusual error in the node function call. Okay, compiles fine, but when calling the function, it throws the following error. Okay, so here's his function info, and he gets the first parameter as a buffer of uint8, gets data, element length, returns a new buffer. Okay. And then fatal error results second. Okay, get back in
Get back in store issue.
So my initial gut is that because he's creating a new buffer on pointing to an existing buffer's data, could it be that eventually
I think
this?
what happened, like remember that we discussed this issue that we were pointing to, there are multiple constructor overloads, and we need to use one which can take ownership. But
Right.
unfortunately, Michael put pointer to the one which does not have this overload, which does not take this ownership. And this is what this developer used. It's maybe a source of the issue.
Right. That's sort of what I was thinking, is that if this underlying buffer that he's grabbing it from the arguments goes out of scope or gets cleaned up or whatever, then this new buffer that he's creating would end up becoming invalid. And he says, if I replace the return in from the new buffer to the original buffer value, it returns fine. Okay. Which makes sense because he's just returning the argument that was already received by the function. So then it still would have a valid reference in whichever he's inside of some data, right? Whereas if he's doing this, it would end up creating the buffer, but then it's possible that as soon as this is removed, or as soon as this executes, this buffer is no longer valid because it doesn't have any references to it. So it's also worried about the memory usage using new. Will it create a new buffer? Also, will it automatically free the occupied space once the function call is complete? Okay, so when he's using new like this, it's not actually creating any new space for data, right? It's just sort of creating this buffer wrapper, which just points to which uses rather the pointer and the length that he provides. Correct?
Right, but I don't understand the code which he wrote. I feel like the initial question was about how to use std vector, right, or something like this.
Right, that it doesn't seem to be matching up with what I was expecting that he wanted to do. Because he says that he wants to be able to use the typed array and convert it to a C++ data type, which is not really what he's doing in his example.
Okay, so let me try to play with this code, and let me post kind of suggested solution. Sounds like our hints how to do it was not enough. Like maybe it's worth to put some actual sample.
Right. Okay. Because I guess like in your example, if you end up creating your own vector and then making sure that vector is valid in the correct lifespan of the underlying buffer, you'd be able to use this data in length and whatnot. Okay. So I'll add a comment here. It's a backing store as the data holder for your buffer sample code. buffer base. The U int 8 array. I'll ask, can you clarify a bit your use case? Mhm. What you are trying to accomplish. All right, we can post this.
Okay.
Okay. Then I think there was another update on this one. I think. Yes, so this is, let me make sure. Yes, okay. So this is an issue where the poster was saying that after a bunch of objects are created, he's getting this, this crash with creating new handles. And then we had asked if he can provide a repository, and he made a branch that demonstrates it. So I've not had any look into this since he posted this, but I will try to take a look at this weekend.
It's nice that the developer was very responsive and created right away.
Right, I wasn't. It's like the same day almost. At your example repository and get back to you. All right, so I'll take this and let me assign this to me so I don't forget about it. All right, does anyone else have anything that they would like to bring up or discuss?
No, I think Legend Cast, he said he needs to go. He already disconnected. Yeah,
Okay.
it's only two of us, and I
All
don't have
right.
anything.
Well, I have nothing else to bring up. What about you?
No, I don't. I just curious, like, did you already kind of able to merge with kind of formatting code?
Yes, we merged that one. Let's see, pull requests, close. 10 days ago.
Oh, perfect.
So a little bit before last week's meeting. I think Michael had done that.
Nice, nice. It's huge.
Yeah. Because there's a bunch of code that needed to be reformatted, and then also manually fixed up. Because obviously we ended up adding the linter, obviously after we already had a pretty large code base. And then we had discussed in the past, like a couple months ago, basically doing this, just formatting everything. But then there was some concerns that it would be possible to like break something, or something could be snuck into the implementation or whatnot. And that's probably why whoever this person put a thumbs down. I mean, I don't really know. But we did break this PR into 3 separate commits. two of them being automatic and then one being the manual one. And, you know, it's mainly just changing like the test code. I really don't think there were that many. The change that was done for the actual implementation, I think, was just white spacing, if I can recall correctly. I mean, it was a long time ago, but let's see. Ooh, maybe it's just large because it's a lot of lines.
But this is great because I noticed that doing some changes and I want to kind of, this automatic formatting goes on, like it was so many changes, it was so painful to edit any code. I think I so much appreciate all this work you've done here.
Right. So now I'm also wondering, I mean, I guess because right now the task that we have on pre-commit still just formats your like your changes, which I guess should be fine now because, you know, like since maybe there is no need to format everything again, even though it really doesn't take that long. But, you know, we can see if people have issues or complaints running the tool on pre-commit. I think the most recent was just some cross-platform issues with Windows and Unix-based systems. But I think that was something that you addressed with one of your, like it was having problems finding Python or something, right?
Yeah, some issue on Windows for some reason didn't work.
Right.
I implemented a small fix there.
Okay, well, I guess that's it then for this week's meeting, and we will give you back 12 minutes of time. All right, thank you so much, and I will catch you online and see you next week.
Yeah, see you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye.
Bye.